Please welcome our panelists. Hilary Headlee, Advisory Leader with the Early and Growth Team at Insight Partners. Vivienne Wei, Chief Operating Officer at Salesforce's Unified Agentforce Platform. Paige Bailey, AI Developer Relations Lead at DeepMind. Liana Whittleton, Partner at Wilson Sonsini, where she advises leading AI innovators. And moderating today's discussion, Sasha Newman-Oktan, Chief of Staff at InstaLILY AI. Sasha helps lead product strategy and multi-agent system development at InstaLILY, and she's one of the driving forces behind the Women in AI series itself. Please join me in welcoming Sasha and our panel for Beyond Intelligence When AI Starts to Act.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see such a filled room. I've got good news and bad news today. The bad news is this isn't a yoga class. The good news is that it's even better. If you look around, we're all here. And I make that joke lightly. I love yoga. But a couple years ago, just 2 years ago, there were no events for women in AI other than a yoga class. And this year there are many, and that's super exciting, but it all goes to show the importance of this event and also the importance of just seeing how many of us that there are and just remembering that when you feel a little bit lonely at the next gathering that isn't just women. So none of this would be possible today without our partners from Wilson Sonsini. We have Michael here as well in the back. Wilson Sonsini is a firm that needs no introduction to builders and dreamers, and that's exactly what this morning is about. It's the idea that all of us are builders and dreamers, and if you need proof, just look around, because we're all here on a morning of Friday, and we're gathering to talk a little bit about our field and what's been going on and what's to come. So InstaLILY is an autonomous AI agent company for enterprises, but today's not about us, it's literally about you. If you're curious about us, we have brought the entire team of women today over to SF to celebrate this event, so there's many of us around, you're totally welcome to ask more questions. But today's really about courage to imagine differently and our shared ambition, so we're here to play and we're here to stay. And women are building this, and we're at the forefront, and today is really about sharing that energy and that excitement with the leaders in this space. So thank you so much for being here, for coming, and for spending your morning with us. I'm really excited to get started, and I think now I'll sit. But yeah, okay, let's, so thank you to Lindsay as well, who gave the introduction, and thank you for the entire team for being here and working also while they're here. It's not easy to be in an AI agent startup and fly across the country and still do your work and then also run an event. So I want to thank Sana especially, who spent a lot of time organizing this event. But to kick things off, we've got an incredible lineup of women together here today, and I think that it would be excellent to start off maybe with a brief introduction of each of you, and give your introduction, how you would like to present yourself today. Yeah.
So everyone's looking at me.
Yeah.
I am Liana, as mentioned, with Wilson Sonsini. So we are a company-side law firm is how I tend to characterize it. So I tend to work primarily with founders all the way from startup up through IPO. I'm a corporate attorney, so that means I'm helping you with your fundraising, your board and your stockholder issues, some of your option employee questions, but our firm is sort of full service. And so our licensing team has actually been taking the lead on a lot of the AI issues, trying to be a thought leader, putting out a lot of sort of blog posts, updates, articles. And so I will say, just to open this up, this is all changing and evolving. And I think it's incredibly exciting to be part of this. but it also means we don't have a lot of answers. And so as you're looking for resources, I would encourage you. A lot of law firms put out updates and blogs, and they're actually doing like state-by-state ones now, because one at a time, states are rolling things out. And so I'd be happy to share those resources with you all, because it can feel like this patchwork landscape that we're about to dive into, and it very much is. But great to be here.
Excellent, and it's awesome to see so many faces in the room this morning as well. I guess, coffee and great conversation are good draws during SFTechWeek. My name is Paige. I work at DeepMind on our developer tools, so the Gemini APIs, AI Studio, Gemma, and I lead our DevRel function. I started doing machine learning as an engineer around 2009, so it's been a while. Was contributing back to open source libraries, helped with some of the early days of machine learning frameworks, and then was also part of the modeling team for Palm 2, for Gemini, for Gemma, and a couple of other models at Google DeepMind. So I'm happy to dive as deeply technical as we want, but also to keep the conversation focused on what really matters, which is how AI is really bringing impact and positive changes to the world.
I'm Vivienne Wei, super excited to see so much representation here. Most of the time, I'm in our customer meetings. I'm one of the 15 people, and I'm the only woman, okay, in a room of 15 people. So this is very different. I'm the COO for our Salesforce Agentforce Platform, now applications and also industries. So basically our entire engineering organization, internally I run it like a business. I actually came from a business background and moved into engineering, so I spend a lot of time learning their language and trying to learn how to influence them in the right direction from a business perspective. And then I also work very closely with our customers around the world on agentic AI deployments, and I see great patterns. And what I found is a lot of my CXO friends started to asking questions like, hey, it seems like you guys are doing something right at Salesforce. What are you learning? So in my nighttime, I post on LinkedIn, I put out thought leadership, I see patterns, and I want to share them with all of you. We need more women that can share those voices and influence change, because until we share, we can't affect change. We need those conversations in the boardroom, in the day-to-day conversations, and we need to hear more representation. So super glad to be here. Personally, I'm a mother of 2 daughters, and so this is really a mission for me. If I don't do this, who is going to do this? So really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Hilary Headlee. I work at Insight Partners, which is a venture capital and PE firm out in New York, but I'm based here. I joined about 3 years ago, and not only do I do some go-to-market advising, I actually lead our team of advisors in our early and growth stage, which are those companies in their 0 to 100 million journey across what they're looking at in their R&D, G&A, and GTM strategies. Prior to that, I worked at a variety of different VC-backed companies helping with their exits, mostly in their business operations side of go-to-market. So companies like Alteryx, which was an early data love of mine, and then most recently was at Zoom for their IPO, and then through the COVID boom on that side. Really excited to be here. Thank you. I'm also excited to share that I lead our Women at Insight ERG. Leading a women's ERG in a venture capital firm is as interesting as it sounds, and also help start our AI council internally to make sure that we were not just advising, but that internally we were doing all the right things around AI to kind of walk the talk of a venture capital firm. And really excited to be here. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, pretty incredible lineup, if I do say so myself. So for years, I think this is a good place to start. For years, we've been talking about AI as this assistant, something that's retrieving knowledge, something that's prompted, something that requires more back and forth between the actual action that it takes. But we're moving into a new place right now with agents to a place where AI is actually able to initiate itself. Downstream consequences and actions. And not only consequences. But today I'm really curious about what that means for us as people, what it means for our organizations, what it means for our organizations as a network of organizations. And I think, Hilary, I'd love to begin with you. You work with hundreds of scaling partners, of scaling companies at Insight. From your vantage point, how are the boardrooms and leadership really thinking about this change from assistance to autonomy?
That's a big question. We'll try to tackle that. First of all, not every board member is the same at Insight Partners, but I'll try to give a general kind of swath over what that is. There's kind of, I don't want to say a 2x2 because that makes me sound like a consultant, and I'm not an ex-McKinsey person, but there's kind of two ways that we need to view it, which is there's AI in their product strategy or AI in R&D, and how our companies are either evolving through that as a traditional SaaS company, or if they're AI agent first forward native, kind of pick your language there. Are they doing what they need to do in the go-to-market side? So we're really looking at two sides of the equation. Is, are they getting their R&D where they need to be if they are already starting that way, like InstaLILY, amazing, love all the things that you're doing. For this company, then we might help more on the go-to-market side, because it still is a business. You're gonna have to find customers, close customers, renew customers, bill customers, collect money, and there's a version of the business side that can't always maybe be AI or agentic first. And so that's where we're also focusing, is making sure that our companies understand what goes into that side of it. So when we're taking a look at it, that's how we're parsing it, is not only that R&D product strategy side, but then clearly in the operational side, it's harder for some of our companies that are maybe 500 million, have been around 10 years, and aren't necessarily taking an AI path forward, but that's not exclusive. So what we're trying to do when we're talking with companies and the board, especially right now in annual planning, is do they understand what can be done, again, in their product side? And then as they're looking at their org through a people lens, not everybody needs to cut headcount, not everybody needs to maintain, and not everybody needs to grow. So understanding what that is, but really stressing, are there, I'm just gonna use this as very generic, are there bots instead of people in an org chart? Are you even thinking that way to come to the table? And with 500 companies that Insight really has oversight on, that's not always the case, that folks are thinking that way. And then there are companies, and I don't mean to keep using InstaLILY, who are way ahead on that side of it. So it really is a full mix of what's happening in the landscape. What I would say for those folks who are selling to these companies, be aware that if you are solving one problem, these operators are being pushed to do everything quickly in an AI world, and there is still a lot of slap some AI on it and you will be efficient. That's not the take of our company, but that is the take there. So be really great at educating folks that you are maybe selling to, so they understand where that mix is. And that's too long of an answer, I'm sorry,
No, not at all. It sounds like companies are really starting to structurally prepare and not just technically prepare, which is...
Great summary, thank you.
Thank you. There's no transcript here.
She's a chief of staff. You can tell she's like, it's these two things, and that's all it needs to be. I love it.
Paige, you're really at the intersection of all of this, and frankly, you're building a lot of what everyone else in this room is using. What's one of the most exciting technical shifts that you're witnessing when you're seeing AI becoming more proactive rather than reactive?
Yeah, I love this kind of concept of AI as a concierge, as opposed to, you having to, as a user, invoke something in a chat or invoke something explicitly. I think Sundar mentioned yesterday, and I'm glad he mentioned it, so that means I can mention it too. Over 50% of the code checked in each week at Google is generated by AI. And so code checked in means that code has gone through code review, it hasn't been rolled back. So over 50% of everything that we do in order to maintain Google as a company across all of our products is generated by AI now. That's both a series of kind of autonomous systems that are just automatically kind of looking around, being proactive about things they could fix, fixing security vulnerabilities, upgrading from one release of a framework or a library to another, but also things like, sort of hearing that a user might have wanted a new feature or that they might have been experiencing a bug and going about proactively fixing that too. And I think that's what the world looks like going forward is, people who are building really focusing on trying to build the right thing. And then the technical challenges that are associated with building that kind of being something that we don't necessarily have to double click and dive deep on. Like none of us, or at least I don't think any of us, maybe there are some like wizards. I don't know that any of us could sort of code review assembly code, right? Like we've progressed over the years to go from things like assembly to things like C, C++, Python, and now we're getting to the point where we're just talking about requirements as opposed to needing to double click down so deep into all of those lower levels. And the future really does look interesting from that perspective, in that, software is just kind of, something that hopefully we don't have to think too awful hard about and worry about framework wars or tabs versus spaces or whatever it is. But we can just focus on trying to build the right things for people.
And what about the shift in developer mindset?
Yeah, I think for developers, it's really interesting. So that 50% metric that I mentioned before, when you kind of segment out based on tenure levels at the company, the percentages do look different based on whether you've just started, you're kind of earlier in your career, versus you might be somebody who's spent a significant portion of their life kind of doing software the old way. And I think more than ever, we're seeing folks who are coming, just from high school or just from college, who are able to really take full advantage of these tools, because the kind of bad practices or kind of the hard truths of the before times aren't necessarily something that we're all needing to experience now anymore. And that's beautiful. I think we're all, no matter what our tenure levels, we're all kind of starting in the same place. And speaking as somebody who's been doing machine learning for a long time, the entire world did change 2 to 3 years ago, like when the transformer really, really took off. So don't feel, if maybe you're just getting started, don't feel like you're behind. Like there's never been a better time to get started. And there's never been an easier time to build, even if you're something like a solo founder.
Can I add something here?
Yeah, absolutely.
I actually think this is a huge paradigm shift. Yeah. It used to be, hey, the senior architects have to mentor the young, fresh, engineer out of college. We drove some adoption. We have AI Thought Lock. Some of the best use cases, the most engaging people are women in our community. And they are also telling me, hey, look, the relationship has changed. Now I'm actually talking to those senior architects and sharing, hey, this is my AI delight moment. This is how I'm using AI, and enlightening the senior architects who are used to doing the same things the same way. And now it becomes a different type of relationship. It's not just that, hey, mentorship, senior people coaching junior, it's a bilateral.
Absolutely, and I do see more often than not kind of the people who are just getting started in their career and experimenting with things like Gemini CLI or Claude Code or whatever it might be, being the ones who have outsized impact on the organization. And also, if you look around the Bay Area, like all of the hackathons that we see in San Francisco, increasingly the winners of the hackathons, they aren't necessarily engineers. They're all product humans that are using, AI Studio or v0.dev or Lovable or whatever it might be to create something really meaningful and useful. And now you can deploy it without ever really needing to write a single line of code yourself.
Yeah, and I would say, just the very fact that you're here, you're already gaining an edge over anybody else. Yep. And this is like level playing field. We're really early in this game. You're willing to put in the hard work. You're willing to experiment and put yourself out there, try things, do things, amazing things. You're going to outperform a lot of others who don't.
Can I add a quick anecdote to that?
Absolutely, yeah.
So we had our CEO conference 2 weeks ago, and there were about 100 CEOs there. And generally, it is primarily male. And I had a couple of them pull me aside. I think I stopped counting at 6. And they were like, Hilary, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, sure, what's up? They're like, I'm finding something and I want to know if I'm alone on this. I'm like, okay, what is it? And they're like, my chief of staff or administrator or somebody that's junior in my team is crushing it in AI? Are other people finding this, and how do I actually get them moving to the forefront? Are you seeing folks in junior level roles, because I'm not on the engineering side as much, like just skip everybody else? How are you managing this where they maybe don't have the years of experience to qualify that they actually should be leading, like our AI task force or our AI lab? And I kind of stopped counting. And so it's not just on the engineering side. We're seeing it kind of be a great equalizer in all of these other departments, and people are really disrupted. I love it. I think it's amazing. I'm seeing the same thing in our own org, where we're seeing folks that maybe don't have the 25 years of business experience that I have. No sweat. I have to unlearn and then learn. They don't have to necessarily unlearn. They're already learning it, and then they just have to add on the business application side, which is already different. And so I think that's something that, if you're not on the engineering side, is like super cool to see how amazing it is, and to hear from all the like whispers of like, are you seeing this? Are other people seeing this? And it's like, it's happening, and I think it is happening in a disproportionate level, at least that I heard about, with women in business.
And also even on the engineering side, like I think there have been some instances as well at Google where we've had people with 15, 20 years of experience. They were leading very large teams, so like 80 people, 100 people engineering teams, who have said that they don't want to lead a team anymore. They went back to being an individual contributor, and it's because they're able to accomplish so much more by having the ability to scale out a lot of agents to do that work. So it's giving every person, like every engineer, every like product manager, the ability to basically have a team as big as you want of agents managing other agents, agents just operating in silos. And it's really, really remarkable. It's super exciting. Like I've never felt more autonomy and more sort of ownership as an engineer in my entire career.
Yeah, definitely. No, go ahead.
I have agents in my org chart for the first time ever. I've done annual planning 25 years and never done it. And it's a really crazy thing to be adding, as I call it, just adding robots. But it's a really wild concept, and it's happening at companies. And I love that you shared that, because that is happening, and we're starting to see that, and it's really a fun conversation to have.
Yeah, a total shift from a command and response to now a collaborative co-creation, which is a super interesting time, absolutely. Vivienne, on the flip side of this, you're also seeing this evolution in large-scale enterprises, and most companies are still treating AI like an assistant. How do you really, what needs to change in the technology or people's mindsets? Where do you feel there's the most resistance?
Yeah, I think the biggest pattern I'm seeing is, there's a lot of AI builders, and then there's not enough AI shapers who are driving adoption. The big voices are the builders. The people who are able to raise a large sum of money are the builders. And what they talk about is, hey, we don't need people anymore. But AI shapers, their jobs, including myself, is really to bring the rest of the world along the journey. And in large enterprises, I don't think there's enough of them. Today, I see CEOs want to change, right? They want, the boardroom CEOs, they want to buy the technology, the greatest technology, but this transformation, it's a business transformation. It's 30% technology, 70% large-scale change management leadership, how we lead. And it's not in the form of, hey, I'm going to hire a head of AI and my company is going to become AI first. It's actually ingrained in where the leadership spends time, whether teams, and setting the priorities and really controlling the inputs. Until you put in the inputs of, okay, I'm going to really re-engineer our organization to be AI first. What does that mean? Everybody embracing the tools from an individual individual productivity perspective, using the tools, sharing the best use cases, creating that momentum and community and celebrating them. And on top of that, thinking about, okay, if I need to come up with an AI agent in a specific set of workflows. For example, Salesforce, we have help.salesforce.com. which is now processing, our agent is actually handling more customer support conversations than our human employees are. It's deflecting over 85% of those support questions from our customers. That's huge, but that required a rewire of how we ran support, right? And it's a combination of, the chief support leader partnering with IT folks. So now you see, there's a cross-functional boundaries coming down, and there's more collaboration. And I really loved your point about, now all of a sudden with AI, there's more freedom. So really, it gives us the opportunity to rethink and create and connect with one another. You talk to somebody in marketing, and there's going to be different ideas that show up that's not necessarily, otherwise, if you didn't have the conversation, it wouldn't have shown up otherwise. So I see this as a huge opportunity where AI just unleashes more of our human potential. And instead of spending the time in the day-to-day and doing all the repetitive filing a form and all these repetitive tasks that agents should be doing, we're actually doing what we are meant to do. But a lot of the leaders don't always think of it that way. They're going out there saying, hey, I'm going to deploy AI and I'm going to drive efficiency and I'm going to cut X amount of staff. That is the wrong thing to do. Why would anybody want to come along this journey if I know my colleagues are going to are not going to have a job? So that's where I think the leadership mindset is missing, and we need to change that mindset.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's actually a great transition, because I think the elephant in the room with a lot of this is Leanna, from a legal standpoint. This raises huge questions. I'm sure you're swimming in many of them, but how do you think legal frameworks need to evolve, and what direction or what shape does that take? What does it look like?
It's a great question. In my intro, I thought that's all I have to say, and we'll just turn it over to you all. So the legal frameworks are changing, right? And I think law always is behind innovation. That's not new. I think the pace, the frequency, the speed, and the excitement right now might make it feel new, but the legal system is always trailing, right? I think if you're in a big organization and you're worried about risk, a lot of what you need to do is, I'm going to say it, this sounds stupid, have a plan, right? I am sitting in these board meetings, I'm sure you are, and the CEO's like, everyone, adopt AI. And you're like, okay, right? There's a whole lot of ways that can improve efficiency, and there's a lot of ways you can integrate, and there's a lot of sides of the organization. And so I think a lot of it is being thoughtful about, what does that actually mean for you all, right? That doesn't mean 20% of the heads are cut, right? It's more of how do we make who we have more efficient? What are the ways that we can use this? And I think first and foremost among that is know what people are actually doing, because chances are all your employees are using it. Whether you have a policy or not, they're doing it. So have a policy, because you don't want to find out after the fact that all of your business information is being fed into something, right, that is outside of the parameters of the permitted use. And so a lot of this is everyone's kind of rushing into something, and you're trying to not be behind the wave. Everyone already feels behind from day one. But thinking about where you want to tackle that and what people are already doing is probably a first step. And then if you're selling into these organizations, right, think about what the imperative has been given to them, right? And I think a lot of how you market, right, what is your improvement? Are you a single niche thing? Is it expandable? A lot of that, you're so focused and excited on your product and the opportunities, but you want to think about your son's someone who's been told, I have to roll out an AI strategy across the board, right? And how are all these pieces fitting in? And can I even manage 15 different tools, right? From a pure legal perspective, things will continue to change, right? At a federal level, I don't think we follow the EU AI policy. My guess is in California we do, right? There's a little bit of tension at whether the federal level is going to punish states that are being too restrictive. There's all these questions, right? When you have agentic AI, who's in charge? Liability, from a legal perspective, flows to the who's in charge. If nobody's in charge, who is responsible, right? And so the EU policy said, well, we're actually going to make the platforms responsible because I can't make the users responsible because they aren't actually involved. That sort of makes sense from a who do I chase perspective, but then it can hurt innovation, right? So you guys are all operating in a gray area right now. We don't know which way it's really going to land, and a lot of this, legal concepts can be confusing. I would take a step back and say, okay, from just a common sense perspective, right, where does the reputational harm fall if something goes wrong? Is that your product? Like, it's, is it the user themselves? Is it your product? Is it the platform that you're using? And I would almost use that common sense framework to then set, okay, what's your risk tolerance for how aggressive you want to be if you don't know where the parameters are? How much of that sort of branding hit can you take if something does go wrong and it's on your lap, even if that was something, you're up or down that chain?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to push further, and then you went there, so perfect. Yeah, governance is evolving as well from being reactive to evolving alongside capability, and that's a very interesting time for building, I think, especially. And I think that's why we're feeling this race as well. I mean, it is a race, but it sometimes feels maybe a little bit too much like a race than it needs to be. But Hilary, I'm curious how this conversation is showing up for you.
Well, first of all, I'm just going to plus one that AI transformation actually is a people change, and it's the basic like change management culture and comms. And if you're not really prepared for that at your company, it is just a statement you say in a boardroom. So just a huge plus one to that, and a huge plus one to the legal side on that too. I'll give a quick example of even internally, we look to improve our due diligence process. It sounds kind of weird to say this, but it was taking 30 hours to run a diligence, from researching the company to going through all their financials to making sure their pipeline is there. And so we took that on as one of the things we wanted to improve. And the first kind of business proposal or internal proposal said, we think we can get this done in 3 months. And then the team that was working on it had 7 different times that they would go and ask for this piece of data, and then they would have to go back to legal security, privacy, security, compliance, and legal. And then they'd do the next step. It was kind of a scene where it's like you go up, you go back, you go up, you go back. It ended up that there were things where the vendor was saying, we just need to pull your data. That sounds great until it actually is 30 years of data in SharePoint that we would be giving to a $5 million tiny company. Those are very important decisions that need to be made along the way. And that's, I think, that what is your risk tolerance and how can you work through that as a vendor? So understanding if you are selling something that your buyer maybe has never done this kind of an innovative change at their company, and the people that need to do that, from IT, security, compliance, privacy, legal, might not have ever seen this either. And so there's this version that I think is really important, and I think it's a positive collaboration, and that's where it isn't just buy the tool and go, which I think those of us who operate know that like cold, but it isn't something that everybody wants to dive into, is your operational, technical, and data debt, and also your lack of any alignment on some of these big decisions that haven't been made. And so I think that sometimes the womp womp side of AI transformation is like, it actually is tricky to do, but it is so exciting when it can be done. And we're really excited to go from our 30 hours to 15 hours, and we're gonna be down to 5, which exactly what each of you have said. What does that mean for innovation and creativity and how much more we can do? But that journey, if you haven't taken it as an actual one to implement it, is pretty hard. And for our companies, that is part of what we're trying to balance as well, is yes, you need to go and do this, but this is not just have an AI committee. You have to be really prepared to understand not just its strategy planning process, now you're jumping into workflows, then you're in your systems, then you get your data, and really working around that kind of standard wheel. And it takes time. Did that make sense? You're so good at summarizing. Did that make sense?
It does make sense. I want to move a little bit away from judgment, alignment, and trust, and zoom out with Paige into network systems and collective agency. The most transformative thing that's happening right now might not just be one autonomous system, and this is really zooming out, but maybe not, because look how rapidly we're evolving now. So not one autonomous system, but many collaborating together. I'm curious, researchers are talking about collective intelligence, networks of agents, planning, negotiating, dividing work. What research questions is that bringing up, and what risks or thoughts does that bring up in your work, in the developer's mindset, and in the general transition? I know it's a big question, but...
It's definitely a big and very important question. I think we're still trying to figure out the different protocols that would be required to kind of have this become a reality that all of us are experiencing between agent to agent communication, being able to have things like agents making payments for you, passing money back and forth, what that looks like even across international borders. Another question that I think is really interesting is that if you hire an agent, like what kind of taxes should you be paying on the agent? Like what should some of that percentage go to something like UBI? If we're going to be moving into more of a world where much of the work is done by systems of agents that are more digital. But Google has released a few different protocols in this space, one called A2A for agent-to-agent communication, another recent one called AP2 for secure and authorized payments between different agents. I'm not sure if folks have heard of MCP servers. I assume yes. But Gemini works with MCPs, so do all of the large language models. And there are some significant security risks involved if you just use them by themselves. You can exfiltrate data from systems that perhaps you've been authenticated into. There's a lot of questions about authentication layers just generally, like can you have some sort of single sign-on for your agents? Can you authorize agents to talk to one another? Can you authorize them to access certain kinds of information? So I think all of the really hard questions around efficient data communication, how do you handle storage, including transient storage? How do you handle authentication? How do you handle security and compliance, especially when all of these become attack vectors for potentially bad actors that somebody's going to have to figure out. And so I think that's wonderful to see. The other thing that I am overwhelmingly excited for is that daily it feels like software is kind of collapsing on itself. Like we're getting to a place where more software than ever is being written, but it's also becoming more and more self-maintained. And so we're starting to see all of the bits influence the atoms of the world, which means that suddenly you have AI doing scientific experiments to improve the process of materials science, or to kind of understand how you might be impacting environmental chemistry, or to orchestrate robots, right? And I think that the next big frontier is going to be how are all these beautiful AI products that we're building going to influence things in the physical world, not just in the software world.
Yeah, Vivienne, you're seeing this inside of Salesforce. I mean, how does that change what an organization becomes? Do we start thinking of companies as hybrid systems? Do we think of them as different entities, or part human, part machine? How are you thinking about things? Maybe not Salesforce per se, but just generally.
I definitely think like humans and agents are the future of work. We're going to that direction now. There's a couple of things. What you talked about on the data debt and maturity is really what every CIO is trying to get their handle on and having a better understanding, because it's such your agents are only going to be as good as the data it has access to, with the security, governance, access control that it has, and it goes into a much more granular level. Because you've all probably seen, like, last year, there was a launch of Copilot, and then there were certain employees who was able to access salary information of other employees that they were not supposed to because it was in a presentation doc that was passed around. So I think about, from a organization perspective, there's definitely going to be more data-aware, data-savvy folks that are part of this agent manager, because we've created a new class of jobs. They're basically agent managers. And they're not necessarily the people who are the data engineer, data scientists, who are the most sophisticated, because I actually truly believe it's just learning a new language of data and AI. And we can all do this. If you've learned programming languages, if you've learned a different, the French or Italian, it's a different language. And so there's kind of identifying, there's that class of jobs that are agent managers, people who could do prompt design, right? who have the subject matter expertise and who are data aware, that kind of becomes a superset of people with the skills to build those agents and manage those agents. Then the second thing is the big differentiation of managing humans versus managing agents is once an agent is built, you're not just gonna let it go, okay? Maybe some futurist AI builder is telling you, oh, the agent is gonna take over the world. You're not. Especially in large enterprises with $40 billion revenue, you think you're really gonna let an agent go and run the whole thing and take decisions on behalf of human? We're still in the phase of human in the loop, and the manager's job is actually like monitoring the performance of an agent. And that monitoring is very different from managing a human, because you're really managing this agent like hour by hour, day by day, and if this agent is 24/7, you better come up with a solution where you have certain people that are taking shifts to managing, looking at the utterances, the evals, what the agent is performing, how are they performing relative to humans, and what are the expected outcome. So that's what I see like the second class of responsibilities, right? First, we have created a new set of jobs, which every single one of you, if you want to do that, you can do that. Second is what is required from that agent managers. It's a very different skill set from managing humans. My direct reports would quit on me if I manage their performance and want to understand what they're doing on a daily basis, hourly basis, right? But it's so that's a very different skill set. Then you can think about, okay, what are some of the tools around it to equip the agents or agent managers to monitor this performance? Now we're talking about, okay, there's visualization tools, there's like analytical tools, there's predictive kind of modeling where you're looking at, deviation from expected outcome, right? So now we have another ecosystem of tool building, job creation, and business opportunity. Because all of a sudden my agents can be looking at, at Salesforce, our agent, we have a sales agent that's effectively qualifying the leads from people who come to our website because we just didn't have enough humans to go look at those leads and engage with people who've interacted with our website. You know what that agent did? It found like $1.3 million of high quality leads within just 3 weeks and one pizza team, okay? So that's what I think about, in terms of the future of work. At the end of the day, we are the ones who created this huge agentic AI. And we're the ones who are gonna be making the agents to do the work to our desired outcomes. So it's, the world is our oyster. If I think about the future of work, it really is like our only limitation is our imagination and our willingness to try, experiment, learn, continue to be curious, and ask the tough questions that comes to you. And no question is stupid because we're all on a level of playing field. I think from everyone who talked about today, like everyone's still learning. We don't know how the thing is gonna shape up in the next even 6 months, right? Because I'm like, nowadays people ask, how's your day going? I'm like, well, compared to yesterday, it changed already. And going to Dreamforce, hey, how's Dreamforce prep going next week? Well, our keynote is still changing. If it's not changing, something is wrong, right? Because the world around us is changing so much. So now you think about, really, every single one of us needs to be asking the business question, needs to be asking the technical question. There's plenty of security problems we have not solved, and if anybody says, hey, you're not asking the right question, move away from that and then go find your tribe. Because your question, I bet you, is probably one of the most critical questions that everyone should be thinking about at your company.
Thank you for that. That was pretty inspiring. I'm curious as well, does that change what an organization even is at the end of the day? And maybe we can move to Liana as well. I'm curious, are we opening up an entirely new set of legal categories? And what does that look like on the legal side?
Yeah, so I think, again, for better or worse, the legal framework tends to follow the ideas, right? And I think what you've seen recently is, the emergence of B Corps, companies saying, hey, look, we're not just looking to maximize shareholder value. This is a much bigger thing. And it is important to us when we're looking at what's important for a company and how our decision-making is shaped, right? That we're going to take other factors in consideration. We're actually going to take that decision-making, put it in a different entity somewhere else. We're actually separating out. In some ways, it's almost like agentic, right? You've got your operating entity and then your decision-making, and there's gaps in between, right? And some of that is important and intentional, right? Some of that, I think, can overcomplicate some of the decision-making. I think most of this stuff is happening on the operational side, so your C Corp is probably still there, right? But how these organizations are interacting with each other is probably the much more interesting side, right? Like on the commercial side, like what does a contract look like, right? And some of the easy, legal AI on our side is, hey, I can just run all these contracts in, like we know what each of these law firms like in all of their agreements. Let's standardize this, right? So can just the way that you're actually doing business across the board change? I think that will happen a whole lot faster than like the corporate entity itself.
Can I give two anecdotes real quick?
Please do.
Yeah. So I love this question about like what even is a business and how does it evolve. The first instance that I'll mention is there's a company, I think it's still in stealth, so I'm not going to mention their specific name, but they're based out of London. And what they're doing is they're basically, it's like a small app farm. And so they have, a handful of engineers, but basically they've just prompted a system of agents to just build hundreds of companies, hundreds of apps that they think might potentially have some economic value. They deploy them to the app stores, and then they see which ones that take off. And then those are the ones that they keep investing more cycles in, mostly just with like agent maintenance and like agents responding to features or to users asking for feature improvements. So it's basically like, all right, use AI to kind of brainstorm what apps might be useful in a given geolocation, create them, deploy them, see which ones take off, and then just invest more resources in those, which I think is really, really interesting. So like a kind of like a spray and pray concept for company generation, and it's just like one small startup team doing that. And then the second anecdote is there's a single solo founder that went through one of YC's previous batches, but what his thesis was I'm going to find all of these small apps that are, mobile apps or kind of basic web apps, but mostly mobile apps that are profitable, that are generating some, monthly return, some revenue, and that are currently being maintained by like one or two guys. I'm going to buy this company for, relatively small amount of money, and then I'm going to make it completely autonomous. So like agents will respond to the support tickets to keep it, just maintained. There are probably not many new feature ads, but like since it's already making revenue, since people are really loving it, like if example of this would be kind of like an app that helps you perfect your golf swing. Like that is definitely something that people would want, but it's not necessarily something that you need to invest hundreds of engineers in because it's not going to be like $1 billion generational business probably. So that approach to like solo founder becoming a private equity firm for multiple mobile applications with agents running maintenance across all of those applications, also something that wouldn't have been possible a year ago, but now is. So those two things, like whenever, those are the two things that I keep remembering as I go throughout my day is just like, all right, like we've got like a very small team that's running a fleet of companies. We've got like a single solo founder that's doing private equity on a whole bunch of apps. Like what does even the world look like 6 months from now?
Hilary, I'd love to hear some of your thoughts on this as well. I mean, I can just see how that changes a lot in VC and in private equity in general and investments. what do you think of, or what are your initial reactions, I guess?
Yeah, well, first, I absolutely love those stories. Thank you for those. I'm not on the investing side, so I'm not going to have a ton to say about the investing side, but I think what I can share is it is really different to even be diligencing a company. And because the traditional metrics that you might look at are going to be different. So the stakes are going to be higher, the go-to-market composition is going to be different, where they're going, how they're going, the people that they're going to be taking along is different. There's still some of those core pieces of who is the person behind it. So who is the co-founder? Do they have a compelling story? And is it really something that they're passionate about? I forget who I was talking to today, but they asked for like, what can I be bringing to the table? And there still is a very human side of venture capital and PE. That's part of what I love about it is there's a connection that people want to have there because they are investing, yes, in a product, but they are really investing in people too. And so I think that's something to always kind of keep in mind. And that side is how important your story is, what you're building and where you're going. Even if you're doing it, if you're a team of one and you're only ever one, that matters from that side of it. So I think from the how we're going about our sourcing side and where that's going to go, it is totally new, totally wide open. And some of the companies that come in, they're a little mind-blowing of like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think that was possible. And a non-super AI like that is a salmon fishing farm in Norway. I never really thought that would need a lot of software, but there is an example of one that was invested in and is doing amazing. And so from, again, those like great creative examples to something like that to more of the traditional side of SaaS, we're really taking a look at all of those, and it's fun to explore and see them. It's definitely a bird's eye view and fun to be in.
I think, with hyperscalers scaling, the cost of starting a business, it's much easier, right? You don't have to go find your own machines and have a server and build your own little data center in your living room. So that's what the cloud transformation has brought. With this generative AI revolution, and we've touched a lot on agentic AI, to build an app, you can use natural language. You no longer have to learn how to code. I do think the deeper understanding in security, governance, and trust is absolutely necessary, because I would not want to use an app, a no-name app, and put my credit card information to do any kind of transaction. The amount of trust from a consumer's perspective is becoming more and more important in our society today. So if I think about, if I'm a builder, I would want to work on top of a platform, build an app that's on top of a trusted platform that's handling some of those security challenges that I may not want to be spending a lot of time on. So for example, like we have a app exchange, and you can literally just spin up an environment and build an app. But with the years of investment into this trusted platform and the foundation, we literally have dedicated security engineers who are looking at the attack surface, looking at the nation states, like new threats and vectors. It changes, the CEVs are expanding rapidly. And if I'm starting new, I would want to spend more of my energy on making the app, getting them to product market fit, than dealing with the security and compliance. It's absolutely necessary, but if I can build on top of a trusted platform, that's where I would go. And then I think from the VC side, definitely, we're seeing more and more investments. I was at a VC CXO summit yesterday, and they're saying now everyone can create a company, right? The cost of starting something is small. That's great. It's very liberating, because it means hey, you roll up your sleeves, you're willing to work hard, you can start your own company. I think the challenge there is how do you vet the businesses from the venture capital perspective? And you have to use machines. You have to use algorithm in combination with human judgment and expertise to do that well. And I don't have an answer.
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Can I add one
please.
thing?
Yeah.
I think what is very interesting about what you said is, does the definition though of product market fit change? Does it start to mean it is private, secure, and compliant for those areas? And I think that's some of the fun side of looking at this. Not that legal isn't fun, but the fun side of that is to take those things into consideration, and then just how much higher the stakes are, right? If you were going to be returning 3x, is it maybe 10x that you need to do now? And so I think that's part of it. Is it's easier to do, and then it's harder to actually sometimes reach those goals.
Yeah. And I think it's also interesting in the sense that, again, in the before times, you're trying to build. If you're
The before time.
in the before times, I feel like a dinosaur most days. I even have like the little T-Rex arms. I think people were trying to build a single thing, like whether it was a film or a song or an app or a product that would kind of by itself just be something that could captivate the imagination or the interest of millions of humans. And now with hyper-personalization, we're getting to a place where, maybe you don't show the same app UI to every single one of your customers. You have it slightly modified and slightly changed. And all of that is just done dynamically based on what their interests might be, what their path to get to the app might be, where they are in the world today, what language they speak. And so I think their like product market fit used to mean like create one thing that works for many, and now it's kind of maybe something that can evolve to be millions of different experiences, kind of autonomously, but doesn't necessarily just have to be like completely bespoke architected by a single person, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does make sense. Leanna, thinking about the integrating governance early versus bolting it on later, what are companies doing right in this space? It
Wrong.
is.
I want to know what they're doing wrong too.
And wrong.
So I'm going to go back to my come up with a plan, right? You don't have to have all of the pieces and the answers, but like, what are you trying to do? I think companies that do it wrong fall into it without thinking about it, and there's that like, oh shit moment on the back end. And often it's like a client asked a question, like, right, let me come back to you. And then I get an email like, hey, did we incorporate this? So a lot of it, I think, is if you can, the more you can map out at the outset, even if you don't have all of the answers, the better. Something Vivienne said, like, if you're in a regulated industry, build that in sooner, right? Like if you're dealing with healthcare, right? If you're dealing with confidential or personal information, if you're doing financial transactions, the bar is higher. Like understand that from the outset. And if that's your target market, pay much more attention to that from the outset, right? There's more requirements, there's more rules, there's limitations that you're going to be hitting sooner. And then integrating that into how you actually set up a product is going to be a lot more important. And so I think the risk tolerance scale, right, is very much driven by who is your target audience, what are the target industries. And so if you're in, I'm gonna call it safe, right, not regulated, you can probably catch up after the fact, right? Again, we're gonna pick on healthcare. If you're in healthcare, you cannot. Like that needs to be part of the outset strategy. And if you're like, oh, what's HIPAA? Like we have a problem from the beginning, right? Like you do need to know what the parameters are and whether you're in these confines or you're not, right? And it's like, digital health is a very interesting space because you're like, well, is it a medical device? If it's not, open field, right? So I think doing a little bit of the homework on the upfront of what might hit you is then going to shape your, well, okay, here's my plan. How much do I have to flesh out today versus in 6 months once I know it works, right?
And what about, Hilary, in terms of velocity and accountability? What are you seeing, what are you hearing in the conversations that you're part of in terms of the firms that are getting it right and that are succeeding and the ones that are not?
I don't know that it's always about pure legal side, but there is a lot of conversations around risk tolerance. And so there is a real shift, I think, there happening of like, what are we willing to kind of innovate and maybe take some risk on, even if you don't know that it's like a stated risk today of what that needs to be. I think there's two conversations that are also happening of Where's there like centralized innovation happening and the risk that you can identify there with your appropriate AI steering committee? And then where is there like citizen AI experimentation that's happening on the company side? So it is kind of those two different levels of, is it AI in your product or is it AI at your firm and what people are exploring on? I think you've touched on it really well, of have a plan or have a line of sight that it's either in your employee policy for the operational side, and from the product side, I'm not as much on the legal side of that, but it's definitely something that comes up around, is this something that we can build around, build with, or build to make sure that it is going to be consumable, if you will, by the folks that need to be using it. It gets a little wild once you get into international and all of those different rules as well. I think the easiest way to say it is nobody has it figured out yet because it is changing so quickly. But I think there's always a do the best that you can with what you have at the time you have it, and track it. Make sure you have that.
Mm-hmm. I'd love to close with a lightning round and one sentence from each of you on what's the most exciting possibility in AI that would unlock massive change, or what's the most exciting outcome that you see in the next 5 years? And I know we've talked so much about, we can't predict the next 6 months, but if you really, really zoom out and think about where you were maybe like 5-10 years ago and what you're working on last year and this year, what can you anticipate and what are you excited for? Just one sentence.
You're all looking at me. Yeah, I thought about this question a lot last night. I think when people think AI, they're like, big, earth-shattering, life-changing, crisis, amazing, godlike, whatever. I think practically what I'm excited about is it is going to change how we do everything, right? Like you even think about like the internet, like smartphones, like they fundamentally changed how we just interact on a daily basis. And I think there's an efficiency to it, right? Someone said it earlier, like I don't want to do those, just submit the paper, right? Like those things is like fundamentally probably the most exciting part, is it's going to make everything smoother. We're going to have this rocky, let's figure it out here to there. But I do think a lot of things will just, things that bother me right now that I hate spending time on will go away. There'll be new ones, no doubt. But it's far less, I think, earth-shattering and macro. Really, it's like the day-to-day, right? I think there's going to be a lot of just smoothness.
And in the next 5 years, I really am very, very bullish on AI for things like material science, and basically anything out in the physical world. Because right now, the process of kind of mixing together materials or mixing together chemicals, seeing what the results are, and then trying to double down on which ones might be the most optimal paths. All of that is rife with like miscalculation, with inadequate data analysis, with fleets of grad students attempting to do it well and like doing their best, but like sometimes things get missed along the way. So I've seen some preliminary results from some of the startups that are working in this space, and what they thought they would be able to do in the course of 9 months, they were able to do better over the course of 1 month. So I really do feel like the potential of things like new semiconductors, things that are better than semiconductors, new drug design, like all of these kinds of things are going to completely revolutionize whatever we do today. And so software is great, love software, love writing code, like hope I get to do it for at least a little bit longer. But the really big things are going to be all of the things that impact the physical world.
Just to follow up on that, I have 3 things. One is I expect there to be a humanoid that's doing my laundry and the basics autonomously. I'm going to give a set of schedule and have it done in 5 years, right? Like minimum amount of cost, affordable.
If I had a robot to make me coffee every morning, like, oh my gosh, like that would even make my life better. Like robot to like make sure I eat and make sure that I have coffee.
So that's one. The second one is I think we're going to see more large companies go bankrupt and get taken private by private equity firms, because I don't necessarily see the same level of urgency, understanding of what it takes to change and rewire those companies to become agentic. And they're going to be displaced by, your Fin AI company, Insure AI companies that the builders are going to come up, build, and disrupt. The third thing is, this is more of a dream, but next time I go to another one of those conferences, I hope the lines to the bathroom are filled with more women, not men. I was at the All In Summit and I was walking down and it was like all dudes. I was like, secretly, I had this moment. I was like, yes, this is the only time where I don't have to wait in line. Then I kept walking to the bathroom. I saw no woman. I saw one woman coming out of it, and I was like, I told her, and I was like, this is so maddening. How is it that it's just the two of us in this bathroom, and then you have men lining up the entire staircase?
Like legit lines. I was there too for at least one day. Like super long lines for the men's bathroom, and then I think just one of the speakers was a woman or something, and that was Kathy
Wood.
Yeah.
And then the president of Dartmouth College.
Yes, that's true. And I guess Tulsi Gabbard also, but all the rest of them, dudes, far as the eye can see. And so I love that.
That has to change,
Yes.
and that will change, and it's in the hands of all of us.
Yeah. So true equity when we're all waiting the same amount of time for the bathroom.
Mine's a little different and maybe more personal. I think at times to sometimes make all of the AI of this work, all of the AI side of this working in business, I'd love to see two things. My dad won't make it 5 years with Parkinson's. I'd love to see medical changes really come into the forefront. And I worry deeply about climate change for my 9 and 11-year-old and anybody else who maybe has a set of a younger generation. I would love to see those two things really change and be the right outcome from what we're all working on in AI. That's so exciting. But I think those two things need to happen in order for it to be all worth it. Those are mine.
I think that's pretty an exceptional way to wrap up the panel. Again, I want to take a second to thank all of you, Paige, Leanna, Vivienne, Hilary, for coming out today, and Wilson Sonsini for sponsoring this event, and also to Insight Partners who led our Series A. And most importantly, thanks to all of you. You guys showed up on a Friday morning. That's not necessarily part of your weekly agenda. I think it's awesome that you guys came out, and just really today, I hope you look around and see how many of us there really are. And you remember that next time you're the only one in the bathroom line. Yeah, thank you. And I think the last half hour, we'll keep it open for mingling and some last little coffees, and thank you so much for coming out today.
Thank you, Sasha. You're amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for having us. All right.
And we have some gifts for the speakers.
Oh, wow. It's like a pageant.
This is why women need to run more things.
This is like literally giving people their flowers. I love it so much. Thank you.